Imagine stepping onto a plane, sliding past those crisp, inviting seats in first class, and immediately feeling that spark of recognition. You know the kind, where your heart skips because you've just spotted someone extraordinary just a few rows away. That was the magic in the air on this particular flight. The thing is, there were no red carpets, no flashing paparazzi cameras. This wasn't Hollywood, but ordinary life at cruising altitude. Yet, in that small confined cabin, a story of human nature was about to play out, one far more gripping than anything written into a script. Sitting quietly in one of the seats was none other than Keanu Reeves. Now, here's a name almost everyone knows, not just for blockbuster roles, but for the kind of reputation most celebrities can only dream of having. He isn't flashy. He doesn't live his life with glittering headlines and constant reminders of his fame. Instead, he has earned a reputation for being, well, refreshingly normal, in the best possible way. That day, he boarded this first-class flight not as a world-famous movie star demanding attention, but as a man traveling like anyone else. Keanu carried only a simple backpack, slung casually over his shoulder. No heavy designer luggage trailing behind him, no assistants bustling around to clear his path. He moved with a calm, unbothered energy, the same way a favorite neighbor might stroll down the street. His outfit was as unpretentious as the man himself. Comfortable clothes, nothing that shouted, "I'm rich, I'm famous, I'm important." And his face wore that quiet, mild smile that so many people recognize, the understated look of someone who prefers peace over spectacle, someone content to blend in. Most people in the cabin were too respectful to approach him. Others may have stolen quick glances, nudging a partner in hushed awe, but no one dared invade his space. It looked like this was going to be one of those serene journeys, the kind where the plane takes off, the passengers ease into movies or books, and everyone minds their business. But peace, as it often happens in stories worth telling, doesn't last forever. Because seated just a short distance away was one man who didn't share the collective sense of respect or admiration. His eyes narrowed when they landed on Keanu. His posture stiffened, as though he couldn't believe what he saw. The businessman was the kind of passenger people noticed immediately, not because they wanted to, but because he made sure of it. His tailored suit fit perfectly, his tie knotted with mathematical precision, and his leather shoes polished until they reflected the overhead lights. He sat with his chest puffed out, tapping his expensive watch as though he needed the world to hurry up for him. Attention, for him, wasn't requested, it was demanded. So when his eyes landed on Keanu Reeves just a few seats away, they didn't shine with admiration like everyone else's. Instead, they narrowed with disbelief. To him, Keanu's quiet presence wasn't humble. It was wrong, unexpected, even offensive. His face said it all. What's this superstar doing sitting here like a normal person? Where's the entourage, the champagne, the glitz? At first, he kept his disdain to himself. He muttered comments under his breath, short and cutting, and shook his head as if personally offended by Keanu's simplicity. A few passengers nearby picked up on it and gave him odd looks, but the businessman didn't care. His ego was too loud to stay quiet. It didn't take long before his whispers turned into barbs flung openly across the aisle. He leaned back in his seat, puffed like a stage actor about to perform, and announced loud enough for half the cabin to hear. "Some celebrity, huh? You'd expect a millionaire to look a little less ordinary." The words weren't simply rude. They were dipped in mockery. Several passengers stiffened, eyes widening. The atmosphere grew thick, as if everyone was silently warning him. "Careful. That's Keanu Reeves. Yes, the Keanu Reeves. You don't just throw shade at him like you're commentating at a dinner party." But the businessman, fueled by pride and the need for attention, didn't read the room. Instead, emboldened by his own voice, he leaned closer toward Keanu and sneered, louder this time. "You're in first class and this is how you travel? Where's the glamour? The designer suit? The big show? Honestly, I expected sunglasses indoors, or at least somebody waving a platinum credit card just to breathe in your direction. The scorn in his tone was almost theatrical, dripping with arrogance, and it sent an uncomfortable ripple through the cabin. People shifted uneasily in their seats, eyes flicking from Keanu to the businessman, waiting. Would the beloved star finally bite back? Or would his response prove exactly why people admired him far more than this man could ever understand? Now, in situations like this, most celebrities would be expected to fire back with something sharp and witty. After all, it's not every day you get mocked in front of an entire first-class cabin. Some stars might roll their eyes and order a drink to make a point. Others might snap with a comeback loaded like a headline-ready punch. And of course, many would simply ignore the whole ordeal, pretending as though the words dissolved into the recycled cabin air. But Keanu Reeves is not like most celebrities. He has built a reputation for moving through the world with a kind of calm that disarms conflict before it even sparks. So when he finally looked up at the businessman, there was no flash of anger in his eyes, no hint of irritation at the insults hurled his way. Instead, there was something far more unsettling for his critic: gentleness. Keanu's gaze was steady, the corner of his mouth slightly curved upward in something between amusement and patience. He simply lifted his shoulders in a relaxed shrug and spoke in a voice that was soft but carried, because silence had given weight to every word that followed. "Well," he said, almost as if he was answering a question as simple as the time of day. "I like to be comfortable. I don't really need all that extra attention." The man hadn't expected that. He seemed almost stunned that his taunts hadn't triggered some defensive reaction. A couple of nearby passengers couldn't hold back small smiles at Keanu's answer, the kind of smiles that say, "Well handled." It was the opposite of a celebrity tantrum. It was the humility that had earned Keanu his beloved reputation. But the businessman, unwilling to lose this bizarre duel he had staged, tried again, louder, almost desperate to stir something that would put him back in control. He laughed, an exaggerated booming laugh that rang false. "Comfortable? Come on," he scoffed. As the flight wore on, Keanu settled into the rhythm of the journey, not as a celebrity basking in attention, but simply as a considerate fellow passenger. He noticed things ordinary people often overlook. When an elderly woman struggled to push her carry-on into the overhead compartment, Keanu stood up immediately, offering a steady hand and a gentle smile as he lifted the bag with ease. She thanked him warmly, clearly touched by his thoughtfulness. Later, when a passenger admitted nervously that turbulence always unsettled them, Keanu quietly offered to switch seats, giving up his own comfortable window spot so they could feel more secure in the middle section. Even the flight attendants, who are used to handling big personalities in the air, found themselves chatting with him like an old friend. There was no ego, no pretense, just warmth. And the cabin noticed. Smiles and whispered comments of admiration started to pass between passengers. The calm humility he displayed was magnetic. The businessman, however, noticed something very different. Each act of kindness from Keanu felt like a spotlight shifting away from him. The louder he had spoken earlier, the smaller he looked now in comparison. His dismissive glances toward the actor grew sharper, his annoyance more obvious. How could a man who traveled so simply be commanding such effortless respect? Then, fate added its twist. Out of nowhere, the plane hit turbulence. A few jolts at first, just enough to rattle the trays, but then stronger shakes that sent cups toppling and gasps rippling through the cabin. The mood shifted instantly. Passengers clutched their armrests, murmurs spread down the aisle, and the hum of the engine seemed suddenly too loud. And there he was, the once hard, self-assured businessman, reduced to wide-eyed panic. The bravado that had filled his voice earlier drained away. His hands trembled. By the time the plane touched down and the wheels screeched against the runway, the cabin was no longer the same as it had been when they first boarded. What had started as a flight filled with routine expectations had transformed into something passengers knew they would talk about for years to come. The businessman, who had once strutted with arrogance and filled the air with his loud judgments, was now a shadow of his former self. His posture was smaller, his voice nearly gone, and his pride, for the time being, had dissolved in the thin oxygen of altitude and humility. As the overhead lights clicked on, and people began gathering their belongings, he glanced awkwardly at Keanu, his face tinged with the blotchy red of embarrassment. Clearing his throat, he muttered, "I misjudged you." The words were simple, but so restrained they carried the weight of an entire confession. Understatement of the year, no doubt. Everyone who had witnessed the earlier drama knew those 4 words barely scratched the surface of what needed to be said. And yet, true to form, Keanu offered nothing but grace in return. He didn't gloat, didn't seize the moment to prove a point, or deliver a cinematic put-down. Instead, he met the man's eyes, gave a small nod, and said flatly but kindly, "It's all right. No hard feelings." There was no sarcasm, no hidden sting, just sincerity. He even added a soft smile, and it landed with the power of a closing scene, showing everyone why so many people admire him not just as an actor, but as a human being. As passengers filed out, there was a shared sense of awe. Some whispered to each other with excitement, "I can't believe we just saw that." Others wore knowing smiles, tucking the story away like a keepsake they'd bring out at dinner parties or family gatherings. It wasn't the flight itself they would remember. It was the reminder of what humility looks like, in action. Keanu didn't prove himself with wealth, fame, or bravado. He proved it with kindness, patience, and a willingness to help when no one else expected it. The businessman walked away quieter, subdued, carrying a lesson that had been served at 35,000 feet, one that couldn't be dodged, polished, or erased like an inconvenient scene in a script. Real life doesn't give retakes. It spills its truth raw, demanding reflection. And this truth was undeniable. Greatness doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need glittering champagne or flashing cameras. Sometimes, greatness is a kind soul seated quietly in the next row, willing to help you buckle your seatbelt when the world starts shaking.